The first human who noticed the shadow did not understand what it meant. Commander Elias Verne stood at the edge of the observation platform, watching the strange planet below. The star above it was weak and red, always resting low on the horizon, never rising fully and never setting. The light spread sideways instead of down, painting everything in long lines of gold and blue. It was beautiful in a quiet, unreal way, like a dream that refused to end. The mission had been simple on paper. Humanity had followed a repeating signal from deep space to this system. It was not a message, not language, just a pattern. Something intelligent waiting. After years of silence from the universe, this was it. First contact. Elias had trained for this moment for most of his adult life. He knew the rules, the protocols, the words to say and the words not to say. He knew how to stand, how to breathe, how to keep his face calm even if his heart was racing. He knew how to speak for Earth. What he did not expect was to feel so small. The planet's surface was smooth stone, shaped by wind that no longer blew. There were no trees, no animals, no signs of cities. Only a wide open plain stretching far into the soft light. The human landing zone was clearly marked, carefully chosen to look neutral and non-threatening. Across the plain, at the exact distance agreed upon during orbital scans, was another platform. It had appeared silently during the night cycle, assembled by machines no one had seen land. It was elegant and simple, made of dark material that reflected almost no light. It stood empty now, waiting, or so Elias thought. He shifted his weight slightly, adjusting to the planet's lighter gravity. As he did, his shadow moved across the stone floor. That was when he saw it. Another shadow. It was long and thin, stretching from the far platform toward him. It did not match any shape he could see. There was no body, no figure, no movement that explained it. Just the shadow reaching. Elias frowned and leaned forward. His helmet display showed no life forms, no heat signatures, nothing solid. The scanners were clean, but the shadow was there. It moved slowly, like it was unsure, sliding across the ground as the weak star shifted its position. Elias felt his breath slow without him meaning to. Training told him to step back, to report, to wait. Something else told him to stay still. The shadow reached the edge of his own. For a moment they touched. The contact was silent, nothing exploded, no alarm sounded. The universe did not change in any way that sensors could measure, but Elias felt it. Not fear, not danger, recognition. Behind him, Dr. Myra Hashino inhaled sharply. "Commander," she said softly, as if afraid to disturb the air itself. "Are you seeing this?" "Yes," Elias answered. His voice sounded very far away to his own ears. More shadows appeared. They stretched from the alien platform, overlapping, shifting, changing shape as if testing the ground. Still, there were no bodies, no visible beings, just shadows, careful and curious. The human team stood frozen. Soldiers, scientists, diplomats, all of them trained, all of them experienced. None of them spoke. Then Elias did something no protocol had prepared him for. He took one step forward. His shadow grew longer. Immediately, the alien shadows reacted. They shifted, pulling back slightly, then easing forward again. The movement was not aggressive. It felt cautious, respectful, like someone leaning in to hear better. Elias stopped moving. The shadows remained where they were. Minutes passed, then more. Back on the ship in orbit, analysts argued quietly. Data streamed in, confusing and incomplete. The aliens were there and not there at the same time. Their technology bent light in ways human science barely understood. They could hide themselves completely if they wanted to. But they hadn't. They were letting their shadows be seen. Dr. Hashino's hands trembled slightly as she recorded notes. "Commander," she said, "whatever they are, they're choosing how we perceive them." Elias nodded slowly. "Or they're seeing how we react." The light shifted again as the planet continued its endless half-day. The shadows moved naturally with it, stretching longer, growing darker. One of the alien shadows separated from the others. It moved alone, slowly crossing the empty space between platforms. Every human present felt the tension rise, not sharp but heavy, not fear but importance. Elias watched as the shadow approached his own again. When they touched this time, the feeling was stronger. Images filled his mind, not pictures, not words, but impressions. Wait, time. Footprints left behind, things that existed because someone had been there. He gasped softly. Dr. Hashino noticed. "Commander, they're noticing us," Elias said. "Not our tech, not our signals." "Then what?" "Our presence." The alien shadow paused, then shifted in a way that felt deliberate. The overlapping space between shadows grew darker, clearer, more defined. For the first time, scanners reacted. Energy readings spiked, not dangerous but complex. Patterns appeared where none had been before. The shadows were doing something. They were learning. Across the plain, the alien platform finally showed movement. Light bent strangely, folding in on itself. The air shimmered. A shape began to form, not fully visible, not solid, something between. But before the figure could complete itself, it stopped. The shadows pulled apart. The shape faded. Silence returned. Elias let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. A signal came through the shared communication channel. It was not language. It was not sound. It was timing. A pause, then another pause, then a steady, repeating interval. Dr. Hashino's eyes widened. "They're responding." Elias looked back at the shadows. They no longer reached forward. They rested calmly on the stone, overlapping just slightly with the human ones. "They're not ready yet," he said quietly, "but they're interested." Back on Earth, news spread faster than anyone could control. Humanity was not alone. The universe had answered, but the message was strange. No ships, no words, no greeting. Only this: they saw humanity's shadow. And they had chosen to touch it first. The next hours passed without anyone leaving the platform. No one said it out loud, but every human there felt the same thing. If they stepped away now, something important would be lost. Not contact, not safety, but understanding. Whatever had happened between the shadows was fragile, like a thin line drawn in sand. Elias stood exactly where he was, his boots planted on the stone, his shadow stretched long beside him. The alien shadows remained as well, quiet and still, touching only at the edges. The weak red star continued its slow movement, dragging light and darkness across the plain. The alien figure did not return. Instead, something else changed. The shadows began to grow clearer. At first, Elias thought it was just the light shifting again. But then he noticed details. His own shadow showed every movement of his fingers, every small turn of his head. The alien shadows, which before had been smooth and unclear, began to sharpen. Their edges became defined. Their shapes became more complex. They were learning how to exist in the light. Dr. Hashino noticed it too. "Commander," she said quietly, "they're adapting. They're not hiding anymore." Elias nodded. "They're choosing visibility." Across the distance, one shadow slowly lifted away from the ground as if its owner had raised a limb. The movement was careful and slow, clearly meant to be seen. Elias responded without thinking. He raised his hand. His shadow mirrored the motion. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien shadow copied him, not perfectly but close enough to be unmistakable. Several members of the team let out quiet breaths. Some smiled without realizing it. This was not language. It was not technology. It was imitation. A simple, ancient form of connection. Elias felt something warm settle in his chest. Not pride, not victory. Something calmer. Understanding. Back in orbit, the ship's observation deck was silent except for the low hum of systems. Screens showed the surface feed from every angle. Scientists watched patterns form where none should exist. "They're not projecting shadows," one analyst said slowly. "They're generating them." "That's impossible," another replied. "It was," the first answered. "Not anymore." Data showed that the alien beings existed mostly in a state humans could not fully measure. Light passed through them. Energy flowed around them. They did not press down on the world. Until now. Something about the humans' presence was changing that. On the surface, the air shimmered again. This time the shape did not fade. A figure slowly emerged, standing at the far platform. It was tall, thin, and unfamiliar. Its form looked like it was made of folded light, edges bending softly, never fully solid. There were no clear facial features, but there was a front and a back, an up and a down. It stood still. Its shadow lay long and clear on the stone. The humans did not move. The figure took one slow step forward. Its shadow moved first. Elias felt his heart beat faster, but he stayed calm. He did not step back. He did not step forward. He waited. The figure stopped when its shadow touched the edge of his again. The feeling returned, stronger this time. Images flowed into Elias' mind. Not thoughts exactly, but shared understanding. A long existence without weight. A life lived in reflection, in light, in motion without impact. A culture that valued observation over action, preservation over change. And then something new, curiosity. Doctor. Hashino whispered, "Commander, are you feeling that?" "Yes," Elias said softly. "They're listening." The figure tilted its upper form slightly, a gesture that felt like focus. Its shadow darkened where it overlapped with Elias's. The shared space felt heavy, not threatening. Meaningful. Elias slowly placed his gloved hand down against the stone floor. His shadow hand pressed flat. After a pause that felt very long, the alien figure did the same. Shadow met shadow. This time, the scanners reacted fully. Energy stabilized around the contact point. The ground beneath the shadows showed faint patterns like ripples frozen in place. The planet itself seemed to acknowledge the interaction. For the first time, the alien made a sound. It was not speech. It was a low vibration, felt more than heard. The air trembled gently. "Doctor." Hashino's eyes filled with tears. "They're expressing something." Elias swallowed. "I think it's wonder." The vibration changed slightly, shifting rhythm. The ship systems picked it up and translated it into data, not words but structure. The aliens were communicating through pattern, through repetition and pause, through time. Elias responded the only way he could think to. He stood up straight. He removed his helmet. Gasps echoed behind him. "Commander," someone hissed. The air was safe. They had tested it. Still, the act was dangerous in more ways than one. It was trust made visible. Elias felt the alien presence react instantly. The figure leaned forward slightly. Its shadow sharpened even more. Elias took a breath of the strange, clean air and placed his bare hand over his chest. The alien did not copy him this time. Instead, it paused. Then its shadow did something unexpected. It grew thicker, darker, more solid. The figure itself became clearer, its edges stabilizing. It was still not human, not even close, but it was more real than before. As if the shadow was teaching the body how to exist. The alien took another step forward. This time, the ground beneath its foot responded. Not cracking, not breaking, but acknowledging the weight. A being that had never left a footprint now did. Elias smiled, small and quiet. Across the galaxy, systems reacted. The strange, unstable regions that scientists had long watched showed minor changes. Nothing dramatic, just a pause, a slowing, as if something far away had noticed. The alien figure finally withdrew its hand and stepped back. The shadows separated gently. The vibration came again, stronger now, clearer. Dr. Hashino listened to the translation feed and whispered, "They're naming us." Elias looked at her. "What?" "They don't use sound names," she said. "They use concepts." "What concept?" she swallowed. "Anchors." The word settled over the platform like a blanket. The alien figure turned slightly, facing its own platform. Its shadow pulled back with it, but not completely. A thin line of darkness still touched the human ones, a promise. Then the figure dissolved into light, folding in on itself until it was gone. The shadows remained for a few seconds longer. Then they faded too. The plane was empty again. Elias finally let himself breathe fully. His legs felt weak. He sat down slowly on the stone floor. No one spoke for a long time. Back on the ship, alarms stayed silent. No threats detected. No warnings issued. Only one message was sent through all channels, encoded in the same pattern the aliens had used. A shared pause, a shared rhythm, a simple acknowledgement. Humanity was no longer alone, and somewhere in the light between stars, something ancient had learned what it meant to cast a shadow. The silence after the contact felt heavier than the moment itself. Elias remained seated on the stone floor long after the alien presence had faded. His helmet rested beside him, untouched. The light from the red star continued to stretch shadows across the plain, but now the ground felt different, as if it remembered what had happened. Behind him, the rest of the team slowly began to move again. Quiet voices returned. Systems were checked. Data was copied and secured, but no one rushed. No one treated this like a mission that was over. It felt like something had just begun. Dr. Hashino knelt beside Elias. "You should put your helmet back on," she said gently. "In a moment," he replied. His eyes were still fixed on the empty platform across the plain. "Do you feel it too?" She nodded. "Yes, like the place is paying attention." Back in orbit, the ship's crew worked through layers of information that did not behave like normal data. The patterns the aliens had shared were stable, but only when viewed as time-based structures. When scientists tried to freeze them into static images or symbols, they lost meaning. "They think in duration," one analyst said, "not in words, not even in images." "They think in presence," another replied. As the hours passed, the alien shadows did not return. No new signals arrived. The planet remained calm and unchanged. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than a quiet rock under a tired star. But across human space, instruments began to notice something strange. The unstable regions that had worried scientists for decades showed measurable changes. They were subtle, almost easy to dismiss. Fluctuations slowed. Energy drift softened. Places where light once behaved unpredictably now showed patterns. Something was responding. Elias returned to the ship later that cycle. He slept, but not deeply. His dreams were filled with long horizons and overlapping shadows, with the feeling of standing somewhere important without knowing why. When he woke, a message was waiting. It was not a transmission in the usual sense. It did not come through standard channels. It appeared as a shift in the ship's internal timing systems, a gentle adjustment that spread through every clock and process at once. Dr. Hashino met him outside the briefing room. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were bright. "They're reaching out again," she said. Elias felt his chest tight. "Here. Yes, but not physically. They don't need to." Inside the room, the lights were dimmed. The walls displayed flowing lines of light and shadow, reacting in real time to the alien signal. It was more complex than before, but still careful, still patient. "They're explaining," Dr. Hashino said. "Not everything, just enough." The explanation did not come as facts or instructions. It came as experience. Human minds connected to the translation system felt impressions of a vast network of civilizations, many advanced, many old. They felt light-based beings, energy forms, reflections that lived between stars. They felt a long history of avoiding impact, of choosing observation over interference. And they felt the problem. There were regions where existence became thin, where things slipped, where nothing stayed long enough to be understood or stopped. These places were not hostile, not dangerous in a simple way. They were emptying. Civilizations had tried to solve it with force, with control, with technology. Nothing worked. The more they pushed, the more reality softened. The alien beings, the ones humans now called the viral, had learned to step back. They watched the thinning spread, unable to touch it without making it worse. Until now, the message shifted. Humanity appeared in the shared impression not as conquerors or inventors, but as walkers, builders, story keepers. a species that measured time in generations and places in memories, a species that left marks. Elias opened his eyes slowly. Around him, others were doing the same. Some looked shaken, some looked thoughtful, a few looked afraid. "They're asking us," someone said quietly. "They're not," Elias replied. "They're inviting us." The difference mattered. The viral were not asking humanity to fight or fix anything. They were asking them to be present, to go where reality thinned and stand there, to exist with intention, to anchor. Days passed as discussions spread across Earth and its colonies. Leaders argued, scientists debated, philosophers spoke on every channel. Humanity had dreamed of contact for generations, but not like this. No enemy, no war, no clear reward, just responsibility. Elias watched the debates from the ship, feeling distant from them. He remembered the way the shadow had darkened when it touched his own. The feeling of weight of meaning. "They don't need all of us," he said to Dr. Hashino one evening. "Just enough," she nodded. "Enough to matter." The first test was small. A nearby unstable region was chosen, one that had shown recent changes. No ships entered it. Instead, a human station was slowly positioned at its edge. The station did nothing special. It did not project force fields or signals. It simply existed. People lived there, worked there, told stories, planted small gardens, celebrated birthdays, grieved losses. They cast shadows. The changes were slow but undeniable. The region stopped spreading. Light patterns stabilized. Instruments that had failed for years began working again. Across the galaxy, other civilizations noticed. Questions came, cautious at first, then curious. Humans did not claim credit. They shared data. They shared experience. "We don't control it," Elias said during one shared conference. "We just show up." The viral appeared again on the Twilight Planet weeks later. This time they were clearer. Not solid, but defined enough to stand openly on the platform. Their shadows were deep and steady, no longer uncertain. Elias approached them without fear. The overlapping shadows felt familiar now, like a greeting. The shared impression that followed was different from before. It carried something like concern. "They're worried," Dr. Hashino said softly. "About what?" Elias asked. "About us." The viral had watched other civilizations break under responsibility. They had seen power turn inward, turn heavy. Humanity's ability to anchor reality came from its emotional depth, its history of struggle and recovery. But depth could also pull too hard. Elias understood. "We won't become rulers," he said aloud, knowing they could feel his intent. "We won't decide the universe for everyone else." The shadows darkened briefly, then eased. Agreement. The viral shared one final impression before withdrawing again. A warning not of danger but of scale. The thinning was vast. Humanity could help, but not everywhere at once. Choices would matter. As the alien presence faded, Elias looked out across the plain one last time. His shadow stretched long, steady, connected to the ground. For the first time, he felt the full weight of what it meant to be human in a watching universe. Not conquerors, not saviors, but something rarer. A species whose presence made reality stay. Somewhere far beyond the stars, the thinning paused again, just for a moment. And the universe waited to see what humanity would do next. The work did not begin with ships moving or grand announcements. It began quietly. Human volunteers arrived at places no one else wanted to stay. Stations near unstable regions. Old outposts abandoned because instruments failed too often. Empty platforms built at the edges of thinning space where light bent strangely and sound felt delayed. They brought ordinary things. Tables, photos, music, paper books, tools worn smooth by hands. They brought routines and habits, arguments and laughter, patience and boredom. They lived. Elias visited one of the first stations after it had been active for several weeks. From the outside, it looked unimpressive. A ring of metal panels, soft lights, slow rotation, nothing powerful. Inside, it felt different. The air was warm. The corridors carried sound properly. When Elias walked, his footsteps echoed the way they should. "This place used to feel thin," the station commander said as they walked together, "like you might fall sideways if you weren't careful." "And now?" Elias asked. The commander smiled. "Now it feels like home." Sensors confirmed what people felt. The surrounding region had stabilized further, not fully healed but holding, staying. Word spread. More civilizations approached humanity carefully at first. They asked questions, not how humans did it but why it worked. The answers were never simple. "We stay," Elias told one delegation through shared translation fields. "Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's boring, even when nothing seems to happen." "Why?" the beings asked. "Because someone has to," he replied. The viral watched all of this closely. They did not interfere. They did not guide. But their presence was felt like a steady gaze from the edge of perception. Their shadows appeared sometimes in shared spaces, overlapping gently with human ones, then fading again. Approval, or maybe trust. But not everything was easy. Some humans struggled. Living near thinning regions affected the mind. Time felt strange. Memories slipped. Emotions deepened unexpectedly. Old regrets surfaced. Small joys felt larger. Humanity had always carried weight. Now that weight mattered more. Elias sat with a young engineer one evening on a station balcony. Beyond the transparent barrier, light twisted slowly, held in place by human presence. "I feel too much here," the engineer admitted. "Everything feels closer, sharper." Elias nodded. "That's part of it. Does it ever stop?" "No," Elias said gently, "but you learn how to carry it." Earth faced its own challenges. Not everyone agreed with the path humanity was taking. Some leaders wanted structure, control, ownership of the anchoring process. Some argued that humans should charge for their presence, trade it, use it to gain power. The debates were fierce but bloodless. Words carried more weight than weapons ever could. Elias addressed the assembly from orbit, his image projected across worlds. "This only works if it's freely given," he said calmly. "The moment we force it, the moment we turn presence into pressure, it stops being anchoring." "How do you know?" someone demanded. "Because it comes from choice," Elias answered. "From staying when you don't have to." The decision was not unanimous, but it was enough. Humanity moved forward carefully, unevenly, but honestly. Then came the place that tested everything. It was not near human space, not near any known civilization. It was a vast region where thinning had progressed far enough that ships avoided it entirely. Light fragmented. Signals arrived late or not at all. Probes vanished without damage, simply losing coherence. The viral sent a message, not a request, a concern. If this place failed completely, the thinning would accelerate everywhere. Human scientists studied it for weeks. The numbers were grim. "This will take more than a station," Dr. Hashino said quietly. "It will take a lot of us." Elias looked at the projection of the region. It felt like staring into an absence. "How many?" he asked. She hesitated. "Hundreds, maybe more, spread out, connected only by presence." It meant risk, mental strain, long-term commitment. No clear end. Volunteers came anyway. They did not rush. They prepared. They trained not in combat or engineering, but in reflection, in emotional awareness, in community care. They learned how to support each other when the weight grew heavy. The deployment was slow. Human habitats appeared throughout the region, like islands of certainty. They did not push back the thinning with force. They did not try to dominate it. They stood. At first nothing happened. Days passed. Then weeks. Doubt grew. Then one morning a technician noticed something small. A star on the edge of the region had stopped flickering. More changes followed, slow, gentle, real. The thinning did not vanish, but it stopped spreading. The universe seemed to take a breath. Elias visited one of the far habitats, standing alone on an external platform. His shadow stretched into the strange light, steady and dark. The vial appeared beside him, clearer than ever before. Their forms were still made of folded light, but now they cast shadows as deep as any humans. They had learned, not just from watching, from standing with humanity. The shared understanding that followed was full of something Elias had not expected: gratitude. "You are changing us," he said quietly. The viral's response came as a warm pressure in his chest. "So are you." They shared memories of their past. A time when they had chosen distance over connection, observation over involvement. It had kept them safe, but also separate. Now they felt weight for the first time, not as a burden, as belonging. Other civilizations began to follow humanity's example in their own ways. Species that lived through sound anchored with song. Those bound to magnetic fields anchored through motion. Each found their own form of presence. Humanity did not lead them. Humanity stood with them. Elias returned to Earth briefly, walking under open sky, feeling the familiar pull of gravity and memory. He watched children play, their shadows racing across the ground. None of them knew what those shadows meant to the universe, and that was good. When he left again, the galaxy felt different, not safer, more real. The thinning still existed, it always would. Absence was part of existence, but now it was balanced by something else. Choice, presence, the willingness to stay. The universe did not change all at once. There was no single moment when everything felt fixed or safe. No signal went out declaring success. No final message arrived from the vial saying the work was complete. Instead, change settled in slowly, like a new habit. Elias noticed it first in small things. Ships traveling through previously unstable regions no longer needed constant correction. Communications arrived with fewer delays. Star charts stopped needing constant updates. Reality behaved more like it wanted to stay where it was. Humanity continued to anchor, but the work no longer felt urgent in the same sharp way. It felt steady, ongoing. That, Elias realized, was the real success. On the Twilight Planet, the platforms remained. Human and viral presence became a quiet constant. Not a meeting place anymore, but a shared space. Sometimes humans walked there alone. Sometimes viral forms appeared beside them, their shadows familiar and calm. They did not always communicate. Often, they simply stood together. Elias spent one long cycle there near the end of his assignment. He walked the stone plain slowly, feeling the light drag his shadow across the ground. The shadow looked ordinary, human, and yet he knew what it meant now. Dr. Hashino joined him near the edge of the platform. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm listening," Elias replied. "To what?" He smiled slightly. "To the universe not slipping." She followed his gaze across the plain. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" "Yes," he said, "but not with fear." They stood in silence for a while. Then the vial appeared, not suddenly, but gradually, like a thought forming. Their forms were clear now, their shadows deep and steady. They no longer felt distant or untouchable. They felt present. The shared understanding came gently, without urgency. The thinning would never fully disappear. Absence was part of existence, but now it had limits. Boundaries formed not from walls or force, but from attention and care. The vial shared something new that day, not a warning, a memory. They showed Elias and Dr. Hashino a vision of the future, not fixed but possible. A galaxy where many species learned their own ways to anchor, where presence took different forms but shared the same core: connection. Humanity was not at the center of it. Humanity was part of it. When the vial withdrew, Elias felt no loss, only calm. Back on Earth, life went on. People still argued, still failed, still hoped. Humanity did not become wiser overnight. It did not become perfect. It did not stop struggling, but something subtle had changed. People understood that being present mattered. Teachers noticed students listening more carefully. Communities valued shared spaces more deeply. Even in small ways, people stayed when it was easier to leave. They did not know why. They just felt it. Elias eventually stepped down from his role. He returned to a quieter life, far from command rooms and interstellar councils. He lived near the ocean, where light and shadow moved endlessly across the water. Sometimes at sunset he watched his shadow stretch long across the sand. It always reached farther than he expected. One evening a child nearby asked him, "Why do shadows follow us?" Elias thought for a moment. "Because we're here," he said. Years passed. Humanity did not build statues to itself. It did not claim titles or demand gratitude. Other civilizations remembered, though, not in monuments but in stories. They told of the species that stayed, of the ones whose shadows touched first, not to claim, not to conquer, but to acknowledge, of the ones who understood that existence was not about brightness alone, but about contrast. Somewhere far beyond human space, a region once on the edge of collapse stabilized fully for the first time, not because of a single presence, but because many chose to remain. The universe held. On the twilight planet, the stone plane remained unchanged. Light still moved sideways. Shadows still stretched long. Sometimes a human shadow and a viral shadow overlapped there. Sometimes nothing happened at all, and that was enough, because the universe no longer needed to be held together by force. It was being held by choice, by presence, by the simple, powerful truth that someone was there and willing to stay. And long after the first contact faded into history, the quiet lesson remained. Before humanity ever touched the universe with its hands, its weapons, or its machines, its shadow arrived. And the universe noticed. As Elia's ship moved back toward the twilight planet, he looked out at the stars and felt the weight settle comfortably on his shoulders. Humanity had touched the universe not with force, but with attention. And the universe, for the first time, was touching back.